I think, to acknowledge some of the benefits. Yeah. And interestingly, if you try and suppress a market, you try and stop it, then markets seem to emerge. You get black markets, don't you? When alcohol is banned, you get black markets where people, back streets, are selling alcohol or whatever. So money and markets, they seem to pop up here and there. They seem to have a power. So one way of looking at money in this way as a means of exchange is money is a vote, yeah? It's a vote in how resources, human resources and other resources are used, yeah? So this is one way, and as I go through these different functions, I'm going to offer different ways of looking at money, and they all have, none of them completely describe what money is, but they kind of hint and they kind of offer something, the way we can relate to money. So one, I think, useful way is seeing money as a vote. It's about you vote to allocate resources in a particular way, yeah? Whether that's physical or human resources, services or whatever. And well, one thing is some people have more votes than others. That's quite clear, isn't it? Elon Musk has a few more votes than me, you know, just one or two more. So he has he can control lots more resources, you know. But then I look at myself and think, well, you know, even though, well, I maybe live on not much more than the minimum wage, but I have many more votes than people in previous generations, going back over hundreds of years. I have many more votes. So that's kind of interesting, I think, to just sort of be aware of our control or our influence. Yeah. So money as a vote. Yeah. And another thing about money as a vote, it doesn't distinguish between need and wants. It just has a power. If we have a vote, we have a power, but it doesn't distinguish between needs or wants. And another area is that money votes are made, money is spent in our name, yeah? So that's an interesting thing, is that we don't particularly have control of. Sometimes that's very good. I on the way here, I walked through the park and, well, all the bins are empty. Somebody spent money on my behalf cleaning the park. If I break a bone, I can go to the hospital and someone will set my arm or my leg. So money is spent on my behalf. Also, you know, guns and bombs are sent to places. They're sent to, you know, to Ukraine. You know, that's done on my behalf in a way, whether I like it or not. So it's interesting just to note that money is spent on my behalf as well as that which I have control of. So I'm saying this because how we spend our money has consequences, and this is where Buddhist ethics comes in. You know, we may not notice this because, in a way, what the market does and using money distances us from the effects of how we spend our money. But nevertheless, how we spend our money has effects. So Buddhism asks the question, well, what are those effects? And can we apply Buddhist ethics to how we spend our money? It suggests we should. Yeah. How we vote for resources. So, for example, I can buy a coat that's made somewhere in, I don't know, in the East, in a sweatshop, but that has effects. You know, it has effects for the people working there. So Buddhist ethics suggests we should think about that. Alternatively, you know, I can go to the market, to our local veg man, and I know that the veg comes from a local place, and it employs local people to grow the veg, and that has consequences as well. So our spending, our actions when we spend money has effects. So that's something to think about. As I said, within the sort of complex global economy, it's difficult to see sometimes the consequences of our spending, but we can take responsibility. So in a way, Buddhist ethics suggests we can bring awareness to how we spend our money. We might need to use our imagination about how that affects things. We can choose to be an ethical consumer. Yeah. One of the businesses that Kulapuri and I used to work in, unfortunately it's closed down, we used to focus, it was a gift business, but we used to focus on importing ethically sourced giftware. And that was something we did to try and adhere as much as we could to Buddhist ethics in what we were selling. So that's Buddhist ethics. Now, I was saying that the money and exchange of money has several advantages, but it also has disadvantages. And one of those is it conditions us to see ourselves as consumer units. Society can be atomized. We can be conditioned to see ourselves and view ourselves as consumer units. And that's not only harmful for the environment. If we all see ourselves as separate, then we each, well, just for a trivial example, but we all end up buying lawnmowers for our garden, and we use that lawnmower once a week. Now, if you think about it, isn't that crazy? And then I could repeat that for lots of other things. We each have to own one of those things, and it drives an economy, but how good is that for the environment? And not only that, is it not good for the environment? Well, it also, it means we tend to see ourselves as separate units, and that can cut us off from other people. So another suggestion from a Buddhist point of view is that we could think about sharing what we have, sharing our possessions. That not only helps the environment, but it also builds the sense of community. Yeah, so I'll leave you with that suggestion. So finally, when we're looking at this medium of exchange, the Dharma, Buddhism, talks about this word dana. Yeah, and this is giving. This is it's a very important practice for Buddhists. So dana can be anything. It can be a thoughtful gift. It can be that remembering someone's birthday, or just buying someone a present just because you like them. Why not? Yeah, it's in a way, dana is a response to seeing the need in another person. So it requires us to be aware and alert and responsive to the need in others, or not so much just a need, just a present can be wonderful, can't it? It just can gladden someone's day if you receive a gift from someone. It shows someone that they care about you. Yeah, so we should remember, I think, that sometimes people need money, and maybe we're sometimes a bit too shy about giving people money. Maybe we're a bit too reticent about receiving money. But gifts, you can give money, and there's a Buddhist practice here of dana. And finally, in this category, I want to talk briefly about the dana economy. So the community of the center here runs what we call a dana economy. So that means we don't charge for events. We don't charge for many events. We ask people to give if they feel they've got something from coming to the center, and that allows people, for whatever means, to come to the center and to learn to meditate and learn about Buddhism. So in a way, we're trying at the center to embody this idea of dana in how we organize ourselves, our little economy here. We try and set that up on the basis of dana. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to say anything about this. Maybe to the end. I'll leave that to the end. But yes, I'll move on to the second function of money, which is a measure of value. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll just say, was there anything in that previous? Any questions from that previous function of money? About money as a vote. Yeah. Okay, will there be a chance to talk about this, any of this in your groups? So I'll move on to talk about money as a measure of value. Yeah. So money reflects what people value. Yeah. if more people are interested and want something, then the price goes up. Yeah. If they don't want it, the price goes down. We're all familiar with that. So in a way, yeah, money reflects what we value. Yeah. In a way, money reflects what society values. The more people want something, the higher the price goes. Yeah. So what I want to sort of draw out here is, well, what do we value? Yeah. And yeah. Well, does the way we spend our money, our disposable income, I'm aware that our disposable income is under threat at the moment, so you may not have a lot, but what do we spend our disposable income? And does that reflect our values? Yeah. One of the things I've done in the past is I've drawn up what I call a money mandala. So I look at different categories of the way I spend money. So do I spend money on clothes or gifts to my friends or going out? How do I spend my money? So there's a suggestion here that can be quite a useful thing to do, and to ask the question, well, is the way you're spending your money or your disposable money, does that reflect your deepest values, what you care about most in your life? Yeah, yeah. So that I think is an interesting thing to do. In a way, money can mirror what your values are. Sometimes we have an idea what our aspirations and values are, but actually we end up doing something different. But money can be a mirror and tell us, what we value, what we value in our expenditure. Yeah. So if we become more conscious of how we're spending our money, what we value, then it gives us choice. We can change if we want to. We can change how we spend our money. Yeah. So this, in a way, comes back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of Buddhist ethics. You might refrain from spending your money on certain things that aren't very skillful or are harmful to others. But also we can look at how we spend our money for our own highest benefit and the benefit of others. So there's a little example here from the Buddhist text, and that's of a merchant called Anathapindika. And he's most famous is one of the disciples of the Buddha, but he was a merchant. And he wanted to give this little grove to the Buddha and his followers. So there's a little grove where it was wonderful for the monks to go, but it was owned by a king. Yeah. So he went to the king and said, "Can I buy this grove? Because I'd like to give it to the Buddha and his followers." And the prince or king said, "Well, it's a very nice grove. I don't think I want to sell it." And then Anathapindika said, "No, I really would like to. Please name your price." And so he said, "Well, you'd have to cover it in gold coins." So apparently the story goes that Anathapindika went away and got all his coins together, and he pretty much covered the whole of this grove. But there was a little patch that he ran out of money. He ran out of gold coins. But of course, I think the king was so impressed. I think he gave him the park. I think without the coins. I think that's the way the story goes. So anyway, that's just a bit of an indication. A little story there. So yeah, whereas in a way money shows what we value, there's a danger, I think, in modern society that actually everything gets monetized. So that's a modern word, isn't it? That everything, people can give everything a monetary value. And that, I think, has an alienating effect. Yeah, if we just see things in that way, that there's a monetary value, that can be quite harmful, I think. Monetization is sort of giving everything a utility, so it has a purpose or a value in that way. That has some benefits, but as Buddhists, I think we need to resist the extension of monetization beyond its sort of its valid sphere, I think. Yeah. And in a way, I think what I'd like to argue is there's a benefit of actually moving beyond that kind of monetization. And one of the things I was thinking about is going on retreat. If you get an opportunity to go on retreat, I very much recommend it. And one of the things about going on retreat is you leave money behind. Yeah, you don't need to spend any money on retreat. For a weekend or a week, you leave money behind and you enter a different realm. That's the aim. And that realm is sometimes called, well, it's, you could call it a greater mandala. So you might have a little one's own life and where you spend money, but there is a greater mandala of aesthetic appreciation, of uselessness in a way. This is what our teacher, Sangha, talked about, there being a greater mandala. And the spiritual life, he argued, needs to be lived from that greater mandala of uselessness, of aesthetic appreciation, which leaves money behind. So a little plug for a retreat, going on retreat. It's really good to leave money behind and live in that way for a while. Okay, so moving on. So we're going on to the third function of money. And that is a store of wealth. Yeah. So we've looked at money as a vote. We've looked at money as an indication of value, what we value. When we look at this function of money, in a way, it's looking at money as energy. Yeah, and I think maybe this is the best way to look at money in a way. So I'll say something a bit about that. Yeah. So I was saying we learned something about ourselves by saying how we spend our money. But I think we also learn something about ourselves by asking, well, what do we do if we do have surplus money? What do we do with it? Yeah, how do we put it in a shoebox under the bed, proverbial? Do we put it in a bank? Do we invest it? Do we give it away? What do we do with our money? You know, and are we risk averse? Are we prepared to take risks with our money, or do we avoid that, or are we tolerant of risk? I think that's interesting to look at how we relate to money, and do we feel we need to accumulate money for security, and what's that about? You know, we can't take money with us. You know, when we die, it's gone, and even when we're alive, it's, well, how secure is money? You know, it's, as we see with inflation, it dissolves. So I'm not saying we shouldn't save money or invest it, whatever. I'm not saying that at all. But I think it's interesting to see how we relate to the money, spare money we have. Yeah. So going a step further, I think if we are investing money or we have money, then again, Buddhist ethics comes in it suggests we're responsible with what we do with our money, you know. So, you know, this is where ethical banking comes in. And one of the business that I'm involved in, we bank with a bank called the Triodos Bank. It's a Dutch bank, because they set very strong ethical standards. It's not just that they avoid harmful activities, harmful industries, but they positively invest in communities. They build solar panels, they build community centers, they help small businesses and that sort of thing. So I'm just mentioning that as a way of you know, where Buddhism suggests that we take responsibility for how we invest our money. We do that, we try and do that ethically. Again, this is something about money following our values. So I talked about money as a flow. There's a quote here from, I think it's from Francis Bacon. It says, "Money is like muck, all the better for being spread around." So I think I like that one. it's kind of the opposite to sort of holding on to money and trying to have money as a sort of an unhealthy security. Yeah. So my personal experience, one of the things I'm doing at the moment as I work for the Windhorse Trust is I sort of arrange loans from the Windhorse Trust to businesses, to Buddhist centers, to retreat centers within the Tree Rat and the Buddhist movement. And I must say, it's a really enjoyable thing to do. It's really great to have conversations with people. Obviously, I don't want people to borrow money if it's not good for them or if they haven't thought it through. So, but we have some great conversations about the projects that they're involved in. And there's something about that's really joyful about investing something that has a collective benefit. Some of the retreat centers, like we've funded, hundreds, even thousands of people go on retreat to these retreat centers, and they provide a living for those who work and teach at those centers. So there's a sort of what might be called a multiplier effect of investing in those centers and retreat centers. So that's a great thing to do. So I feel very privileged to be working in that kind of business. Yeah. So in a way, Buddhism promotes an attitude of abundance. Yeah. So it suggests we invest in what's most deeply important for us, in our friendships, in our families, in relationships, and in what helps us to grow and develop, and what helps other people to grow and develop. So if we invest in that, if we bring an attitude of abundance, then, well, in a way, what we attend to tends to bring about results. So, yes, I could say more about that, but I think I need to move on. So finally, the last one, the last function of money is, this one's getting a bit more complicated, a standard of deferred payment. Yeah, so this is about debt, really. So money is a commonly accepted way of valuing a debt. It kind of tells you what you need to do to pay off a debt. Yeah. So yeah, and in a way, I think there's an economist, David Graeber, he said that actually debt came before money. So, which is kind of interesting. So there's nothing. I've looked in the Buddhist teaching, and there's nothing to say that you shouldn't lend money to people. You shouldn't invest, or neither that you should borrow. So, but I think the important thing is to bring Buddhist ethics to this. And well, debt brings an obligation, doesn't it? So I think if we are going to take on a debt ourselves, I think it's really useful to ask, well, is this going to distract me from what is most deeply important to myself? Does it distract from my spiritual life? Does it take me away from what I value most in life? So yes, so I think the Buddha is suggesting that we don't take on an unhealthy burden in relation to debt. That's quite important. So in a way, and talking about money more in general, in a way, what we're saying here is we want to be not to be mastered by money, but we want to be a master over money, and make sure that money is supporting what is most important, in supporting our spiritual lives. So, as I mentioned earlier, in Theravada Buddhism, monks avoid handling money, So, but we can't really avoid that. And well, certainly in later Buddhism, in the Mahayana, there's an encouragement to even to master all dharmas. In one of the Buddhist Mahayana sutras, there's a character called Vimalakirti, and he masters all dharmas, including being able to run businesses and banks. And what this is symbolic of, it shouldn't be taken too literally, but what it's symbolic of, I think, is that if we want to promote Buddhism, if we want to promote the Dharma, then that does need money, and we need to know how to handle that and handle it skillfully and ethically. Yeah. So money is needed to build what we call the Buddha land. I don't know if you've heard that term, the Buddha land, but in a way, it's a Buddha land is the ideal environment where everyone can grow and develop and deepen their practice. So yeah, a Buddha land in a way symbolically represents the ideal conditions to practice. And in a way, what we're trying to do here in the center and in the wider Cambridge Buddhist mandala, which does include the businesses that Kulapriya mentioned, and we also have residential communities, and just within the way we relate to each other here, and the Dharma economy I mentioned earlier, what we're trying to do is to build like a Buddhist economy, a Buddha land in miniature, in microcosm. Don't want to have delusions that we're going to change the whole world, but if we can create an environment where Buddhists and a way of relating a Dharma economy, we can, in a way, help to create conditions where people can practice. And that's in a way what we're trying to do here. In a way, that is what the Sangha is trying to offer to Cambridge. Yeah. Yeah. So one way of doing that, I'll just mention briefly, just to finish off, one way of doing that is to run this center. Another way is, the Kulapriya and I have been involved in, is to run a right livelihood business. So it's, and we've done that. Sometimes it's called, well, the business we're doing is a team-based right livelihood business. So what is that about? I'm just going to say something very briefly. So the key features of the business, it's an experiment in a way. It's not there so much in the Buddhist tradition, but team-based right livelihood is something that the Triratna Buddhist community have experimented with, and we're still experimenting with, and I think we'll go on experimenting with. But the idea, what we're trying to bring about, is a context, a work context, particularly as we spend so much time at work. We're trying to create a context which really supports our individual growth and development. It really helps us to deepen our awareness and our compassion and other qualities like that. So it's really trying to help that. And the way we're trying to do that is to work in a team. Yeah, we're supporting each other to do that. Yeah, that's really important. That each of us, we bring common goals and common values. We try and support ourselves. And then finally, we choose an altruistic goal. So the profits of the business that Kulapriya and I work with, it doesn't go to bonuses for us. We chose, when we have a surplus, to give that away. Yeah, and sometimes the Buddhist businesses within the Triratna community don't necessarily give away money. They might give something else. But the aim is to provide something which is a benefit for other people. We try and follow an altruistic idea. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what we're doing within team-based right livelihood. So I think I'm noticing the time. It's definitely time for us to go into groups. So I'll leave you just with some questions that you might want to look at in the groups. Hopefully, maybe there'll be things you want to talk about, but you could talk about, there's 3 questions here. So how would you characterize your relationship with money? Does it affect the way you live your life? And are you happy with that? Is there anything you'd like to change in relation to how you relate to money? And also, like for last, are you aware of the consequence of how you spend your money and how your conditioning affects you in relation to money? So there's a few pointers that you might want to talk about. You might also, some of you who are a bit more experienced, you might also try and connect these Buddha figures with the topics I've discussed. I'll leave that just in an esoteric question. Anyway, so